Welcome to Murder and Everything Else. My name is Joy.
And my name is Cheryl. Joy and I are two very old friends who love to talk about murder and everything else.
Cheryl, I just have to tell you, we are 2 months in to a new leadership team in this country. 2 months. And this guy, Jeffrey Goldberg, who works for The Atlantic, yesterday wrote this article. It's entitled, "The Trump Administration Accidentally Texted Me Its War Plans." So it says, "The U.S. national security leaders included me in a group chat about upcoming military strikes in Yemen. I didn't think it could be real, and then the bombs started falling." So I saw some news clips online from the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, who, by the way, he got his job by being a commentator on Fox News, which means I probably should be becoming, what do they call that doctor guy who's like the head doctor?
The head doctor of?
Surgeon General. That's what I'm going to be. I'm going to be nominated for Surgeon General. Anyway, this guy was on a text thread that included like Marco Rubio, who is, for those of you who are listening to this, if you don't know who he is, he's the Attorney General. It included the president. It included the Armed Forces, Pete Hegseth, and, some other top level guys. Yeah, so that I will tell you, as just a regular guy or girl, whatever, it doesn't have to be gender specific. It also included the vice president, JD Dum Dum Vance. Excuse me. I know that's not his middle name or a nickname, but that's just what I threw in there. It doesn't instill a lot of confidence as just a regular person to know that we're including random Americans and also journalists that have no security clearance. And I will also say that if this had been, I don't know, any other group of people, they probably would have called for someone's resignation, or they would have said, "You people are incompetent. You should probably go look for a different job that doesn't involve security." And also, they were on they were on a text thread. It wasn't like they were in a secure room on a secure channel on some secure, encrypted something. It was just like random. It would be like if you and me were texting about, I don't know, the podcasting secrets of the universe, and we made it available to everyone. But even that wouldn't be that big of a deal because nobody cares about us.
Well, so what kind of, was it a text or a chat platform?
It was it was a text thread. It was it wasn't even like a big deal thing.
It wasn't a big deal thing. It was supposed to, like Mission Impossible, was it supposed to disintegrate after a certain time? Wasn't it?
It's supposed to explode. No, it was on an unsecure group chat. And the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, Jeffrey Goldberg, who got the text messages, said that it appeared to be authentic. And then obviously was corroborated when the bombs started to fall in Yemen on these Houthi rebels. So they are reviewing how an inadvertent number could have been added to the chain, but it's very alarming.
Yeah, it is. That's an understatement.
For example, the former Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, was so outraged. She tweeted, "You have got to be kidding me." Pete Buttigieg, who was the transportation secretary under the Biden administration, actually went on like a TikTok and was like, "Fuck around and find out." Like, he actually dropped some F-bombs because he was like, "These guys don't know what the fuck they're doing." Like, that's what he actually said.
So what does the guy have to say for himself?
Well, Pete Hegseth criticized this Jeffrey Goldberg guy and said it was a deceitful and highly discredited so-called journalist who's made a profession of peddling hoaxes time and time again. And he said, this is the guy that peddles in garbage. This is what he does. But it doesn't matter if he peddles in garbage or not. He still got on a text thread where he
Right.
got classified information about dropping fucking bombs. And the other thing, Cheryl, is imagine being one of the men and women in service to our country who are like in those areas of the world, and the idea that their security could be breached and they could be killed in the line
Right.
of duty because they are active service members. As a wife and a mother, if my children or my spouse or any of my nieces or nephews or my cousins or my brother or whatever were in those countries, I would be livid to think that these kind of shenanigans were going on. Livid, because they're like sitting ducks over there.
So what does the Secretary of Defense have to say?
Well, I just told you what he had to say. He said that Jeffrey Goldberg peddled in lies and
That's
peddled
all.
in untruths.
But
it's so crazy. I mean, it's been labeled as reckless, irresponsible, dangerous, carelessness. People are just coming out. Unfortunately, the only people coming out against it are people on the other side of the aisle. So apparently everybody on, Trump's side of the aisle seemed to think that this is just business as usual, which I have to be honest with you, Cheryl. Remember, in his last 4 years, he was impeached twice. And he's also a 34-time convicted felon. So maybe this is just business as usual. Remember, we hired a guy with a criminal record to run the country.
You know what the Secretary of Defense should have said? I meant to do that.
Yeah.
I mean,
oh, yeah.
So he's just deflecting. That's all he had to say. Was
sure. Well, and when they questioned the president 2 hours after it happened at a press conference, even the president didn't know that it had happened. He said, "This is all news to me."
Well, that's what he always he always plays dumb.
Mm-hmm.
But wow.
Someone else on the other, someone on in Trump's cabinet, Tulsi Gabbard, actually said that it was not classified. Well, if it's not classified, why don't we put it out on Twitter then? Because then the Houthi rebels could see what's happening and run away. I mean, it's so cringy, and so you know what it looks like? Amateur hour. That's what it looks like.
Well, and also when it's blatantly obvious, that something very bad happened and no one takes responsibility, it just makes it worse. It makes it worse just to be truthful and address it and take accountability and go from there. You're just digging your hole deeper.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Well, there's a lot of holes on that side of the fence. And I got to tell you, I'm not talking about the kind you dig. I'm talking about the kind that are related to asses, as in assholes. But anyway, moving on to updates. Cheryl, last week we talked about Noreen celebrating a milestone birthday. Happy milestone birthday again, Noreen.
Again.
But I said that the way you say happy birthday in Hawaiian is Melikilikimaka, which was not true. That is Merry Christmas. The way you say happy birthday in Hawaiian is like this. And by the way, feel free, anybody who is Hawaiian, to correct my pronunciation, but it's pronounced like that. This is how you say it. Haoli la hanao. Have you ever heard that?
That sounds good to me.
Actually, a resident Hawaiian on this podcast, I guess you would be able to tell me if it was right or not. Haoli la hanao. Does that ring a bell? Haoli la hanao.
No, but Do you want to hear? Have you ever heard? Okay, so you know when you sing happy birthday and you go happy birthday to you, cha cha cha, right? You've heard that, right?
Yeah.
Have you heard this? Happy birthday to you, woo! Happy birthday to you, wee! Have you heard that?
No.
Okay, so if my niece and my sister Noreen, if you guys are listening, see, it's not just me. So I was sent video from my sister's uh, surprise birthday, and that's what they do there. So I said, is that woo wee thing? Is that a Hawaiian thing? Because I've never heard it before. And my niece wrote back and she put laughing out loud, no. And I thought,
Huh.
well, I've never heard the woo wee. I've only heard the cha cha cha. So I'm glad you haven't either. Because I was like, have I been living under a rock? But
Yeah,
yeah, that's
Renee,
what they
nice
do.
try.
Yeah, they go happy birthday to you, woo, happy birthday to you, wee. It's very cute, but
Well,
I was
maybe
like,
the
wow, I
woo
have
and the
never heard
wee,
that.
maybe the woo and the wee is also Hawaiian.
Uh,
I
Well,
I
no.
guess I'll check in with our resident Hawaiian to find out.
Anyway, this podcast is very educational.
It
You're learning
is.
how to say happy birthday in
It
Hawaiian
is
and a
very educational.
new way to sing happy birthday,
Anyway, if
anyway.
Jason Momoa is listening to this, could you reach out one on
And
one
let us
and let
know.
me know whether or not how Oli La Hanau means happy birthday and if I'm saying it right? And if I'm not saying it right, maybe we could schedule a one on one where you walk me through the correct pronunciation. Just
Maybe
saying,
you
I'm
can
totally
tutor
available.
her.
I'll clear my schedule. Anyway, in other updates, last week I talked about the Holy Trinity, Peter, Paul, and Mary. But I wanted to add that we are in the time of Lent right now, and we're also in the month of Ramadan. So if you are Catholic or Muslim, happy Lent and happy Ramadan. Anyway, Cheryl, what would you give up for Lent if you were Catholic? I will tell you what what I would give up. I would give up trying on new shoes. Not shopping or buying new shoes, but just trying them on. What about you?
What would I give up? I don't know. You got to give me time to think about this. Actually, I was brought up Catholic, but I am not practicing. So I don't have to make a decision on that.
All right. I was going to say, if you want, you could give up on men for Lent. Get it?
Done.
Anyway, what about you, Cheryl? You got some updates for me?
Well, speaking of the time of the year, it's March. As we record this, it's March 25th, and it's 96 degrees today. I just want you all to know
Holy
that.
hell.
For
Guys,
all of you
speaking of Lent, if you want to know what it's like to burn in hell, move to Arizona.
to the valley of Arizona. I'm sure that the Northern Arizona is nice.
It's like
But
that Bible
down
verse.
here,
Yea, though I walk through the
oh,
valley
the
of
valley of the
Arizona, I will fear no death.
yeah. So yeah, I just wanna put that out there for all of you enjoying a real spring. A real spring. How it's that does not exist here, apparently. It's gonna be 96 today.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Well, don't melt. Whatever you do, don't melt.
Or
Um,
have a meltdown.
you
Already did
know, you know what I love to do when it's really hot in the summer is I like to eat cold noodle soup. And when you come to visit me, I'm going to make you Korean cold noodle soup. It's called naengmyeon.
that.
It's really good. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so good. And you know what the seasoning, the underlying flavor is horseradish.
Oh, I love horseradish.
Oh, good. You're going to love it then. It's
Love
so
horseradish.
good.
Ah,
Anyway, rolling on to shout outs. Okay, guys, it is prom season. Okay. And Cheryl, did you go to a prom?
I did. I was in the homecoming court.
Shut up.
Yeah,
Well, I got to
that
tell
was a
you,
surprise.
I went to a weird fundamentalist Christian school where we weren't allowed to dance. It was kind of like Footloose. We weren't allowed to dance. We weren't allowed to wear like prom dresses. We weren't allowed to have popular music.
Oh,
We weren't allowed, we had to eat weird food and we had to sit around and pretend like we were, 80-year-olds on Falcon Crest. But anyway, I took my daughter prom dress shopping yesterday, and I have a shout out for Macy's. Remember, we don't get any special kickbacks or love from these shout outs from the companies or, places that we shout out. But I took my kid there, and she found a dress that had a tag that said final sale, and it said it was $28. But when she tried it on, it fit her like a glove. I sent Cheryl a picture. Guys, it's so pretty.
Beautiful.
But when
Oh,
they rang it up, it was $13.08.
my God.
Holy shit. So
I
thank you,
love when stuff
Macy's.
like that happens.
Yeah, it's a beautiful dress. I'm here to
It
tell you,
is.
for those of you going out prom dress shopping, you can find beautiful, affordable prom dresses. And because it was so cheap, I made up for other ways to stimulate the economy. Like I took her out to lunch. I bought her a cute little dress at H&M. I bought myself a cute little animal print coat. And there might have been some shoes that were purchased in there as well.
Might.
So there.
Might. The chances are high that there were
That's-
shoe purchases for Joy.
That's right. So anyway, what about you, Cheryl? You got any shout outs for us?
I have a shout out. So I'm doing a lot of throwback shout outs, right? I talked about Lars and the Real Girl and Little Miss Sunshine. I mean, these movies are like 20 years old. I've also got in touch again with my love for Survivor. I have been binge watching Survivor, and I told you, Joy, they have been going nonstop for 20 since I think it's since 2000 or 2001. They're going to be on their like 48th season, but I'm watching whatever's available on Hulu, and I'm telling you, it doesn't matter if it's 20 years ago or 2 years ago. Because they're on an island and they're all dirty and they're wearing their buffs and skimpy things and whatever, it doesn't matter what year it is. It's not dated. It just, you get sucked in. And a few episodes ago, I said that I stopped watching it because I didn't like the drama and the nastiness. And I still don't like the nastiness. I don't like when people get really nasty. Like, the final tribal council where the people that were voted off have a chance to say something to the
talk
people
shit
that are
on everybody. Like,
I really
you're a rat and I am a snake.
And the snake eats the rat.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's like mild compared to the things that other people have said on other seasons, and that makes me cringe when people get super nasty. I don't really enjoy that part of it, but I do enjoy seeing how things can turn and change.
The tides.
Like, yeah, and I don't mean to get all philosophical and whatever, but it's very indicative of just life, and how you can only plan so far ahead. It kind of goes to what you and we had a conversation earlier this morning, but you can only plan so far ahead. You know what I mean? You can't map out your whole entire life. And it's just interesting watching that show, because that's what happens. If they try to plan too far ahead, something comes in and twists it, and they have to regroup. And that's really what life is like, It's true. Anyway, yeah, shout out to Survivor. If you guys have never checked it out, just grab one season, and I swear to you, you're going to be hooked. It's so addictive, this show.
Guys, this week, Cheryl and I are going to talk about everything else. And the everything else that we're going to talk about is we are going to talk about two of the films that were nominated for Oscars, and one won and one didn't. One actually won quite a few awards. But before we dig into the meat and potatoes of these movies, we need to issue a little bit of spoiler alert. If you have not seen any of the movies that if you have not seen these two movies, then you're not going to want to listen to this, because it's going to ruin the ending for you. But the movies are Past Lives, which was nominated for Best Motion Picture Drama, and also, Best Picture and also Best Original Screenplay. And then also the other film that we're going to talk
Wait,
about.
what year was it nominated? It wasn't this year, right?
Oh, sorry, 2024.
Okay.
And then the other film is Anora, which was nominated and this year, and it got 6 nominations at the 97th Academy Awards, and it won 5: Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actress, Mikey Madison, Best Original Screenplay, and Best Film Editing. Yeah, it got 7 nominations at the British Academy Film Awards. It won 2 of 5 nominations at the 82nd Golden Globes. So it really cleaned up this year. So if you haven't seen either of these movies, you'll want to just listen to our 45 minutes of chitter chat at the beginning and come in for our closing. Okay, Elena? You heard it here. But anyway, that aside, we're going to start with past lives. Okay. First of all, I just have to say that a friend of mine that I went to school with growing up named Sherry reached out to me and said, "Have you seen this movie called Past Lives? I thought of you when I saw it, and I just wanted to tell you, she thought it was interesting and a fascinating look on immigration and, all the, like what it's like when you immigrate from an Asian country, etc." This movie is about a young girl who immigrates from Seoul, South Korea. I came to this country from Seoul, South Korea as a small child. So anyway, I said to Cheryl, I go, let's watch this film. She had never seen it, which is pretty rare, right, Cheryl? Because you watch a lot of movies.
Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, I hadn't even heard of it. I have not been keeping up with the award shows. I
And I
used to
haven't
be
either.
so into watching the award shows, and yeah, I'm just kind of disillusioned by them, but we can go into that later.
Yeah, so Cheryl and I watched this film, and then we decided we wanted to talk about it. I will tell you, even though it was nominated at the 96th Academy Awards for these 2 awards, I never even heard of it.
Mm-hmm.
Had you?
Me too. No, I didn't know anything about it until you told me, we should watch it.
Yeah, it's categorized as a romantic drama film, and I have to tell you, oh, and the plot is semi-autobiographical and inspired by real events from Celine Song's life, who is the writer and director of the film. I had to tell you though, Cheryl, I wouldn't have categorized this movie as romantic.
Oh, I would have. I agree with that. Romantic drama, yeah. I agree with that. What would you have categorized it as?
I would have said drama, but I didn't really find it. It's funny. I didn't find it. I don't know. Anyway, we're going to get into it and I'll talk a little bit about why. So basically this movie follows the story of 2 childhood friends over the course of 24 years while they contemplate the nature of their relationship as they grow apart, living different lives. And what happens is there's these 2 kids, Na-young and Haesung, and they're 12-year-old classmates, and they are friends, and they develop feelings for one another and go on like a play date / date set up by the parents. And then shortly after that, Na-young, which is the young girl, her family immigrates to Canada, and then they lose contact. And then Na-young changes her name to Nora, which is easier because if you think about it, not all names are easy to pronounce in both Korean and English. And her parents would have been able to call her Nora, and Canadians would call her Nora, and that would be an easier name to choose than, like, for example, one of my aunts who picked the name Muriel, and no one in our family could pronounce it because R and L don't exist in the Korean alphabet. So everyone called her Muriel. But anyway, that I completely digressed. I'm sure I could do an entire episode on really bad names to pick when your alphabet doesn't support those letters. Anyway, because of the thing that I really loved about this, Cheryl, is one of the things I loved about this movie is you realize that there is a part of time where they don't connect, one because of their ages and they're in the busy parts of middle school and high school and university and all that. But also um you get the feeling that the time that they were growing up in South Korea and the time she immigrated, that it was pre-internet. And you know, you and I also have gone through that in our lives, having been, you know, grown up in a time when the internet wasn't around.
Right.
So like one of the things that has been so rewarding about the internet is like being able to reconnect with, for example, I lived in Jamaica when I was a child, and I remember leaving Jamaica and thinking I'll never ever see these people again because while I like to write letters, nobody else liked to write letters. I realized that very
Hmm.
early on in my life. And so I would lose touch with my friends, and it was really heartbreaking because I remember thinking, "Oh, so and so is my best friend," but not anymore because I wrote them 5 letters and they never responded. And I don't put
Oh,
that on my friends. It's just not everybody's really good at corresponding. So,
yeah.
you know, like the internet has been so instrumental because I've reconnected with friends in Jamaica, with ex-boyfriend in Jamaica, with, you know, neighbors that live down the street, and been able to like connect with them online on different, you know, social media platforms and find out who they're married to and what their children look like and what their careers have taken them in which directions, and have conversation. I've actually met up with some of them in person so that we can really like just kind of fill in those gaps of what's happened in our lives.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a great tool. I rarely use it, but it is. It's great. It's what when you think about it, back in the days when we, like you said, there was, when you left Jamaica, you just thought, I'm never going to see these
Mm.
people. I mean, that's
Yeah.
like, yeah, if you come from a certain time, for all you youngins out there, there was a time where you really had no way of communicating with someone, after, if you weren't within their, within arm's length, where you didn't live in the same city or whatever. There was
Yeah.
actually no way to keep in touch, or yeah, it's pretty
Yeah.
incredible.
So, so 12 years later in 2011, um, Haesung, the young man in the movie, has finished his military service. Nora has moved to New York City, and Nora discovers on Facebook that Haesung posted he was looking for Nayoung, her Korean name, unaware that she had changed her name. And they reconnect through video calls at this time. And but he's starting like architectural program or some kind of like, was it architecture? Anyway, they're unable to visit each other because he's going to school now and she is becoming a writer. And, you know, their careers are taking off or schooling is happening. So it just doesn't work out. Um, and Hesung moves to China for Mandarin language exchange. And then Nora moves, she goes to this writer's retreat in Montauk, and while she's at this retreat, she meets Arthur and she falls in love with him. And um, they begin a relationship. And at one point, they're talking about this concept of inyon, which is a Buddhist concept of how the relationship basically between two people in this life could be influenced by interactions in all your past lives or in a past interaction. And I
Hmm.
wanted to ask you what you thought of that because I really loved that concept.
Well, I believe in past lives, so I I totally believed it. And I mean, I feel like that could be true. I feel like if you haven't resolved something in your past life, that maybe you come back to, try to reconcile that or work through that, or whatever it may be. If you haven't seen Defending Your Life, right? That
Yeah,
movie,
I
Defending Your
have.
Life.
I
Oh, you
have.
have.
With
Okay,
Albert
well,
Brooks?
yeah, and it's sort of like that. If anybody hasn't seen it, where they go into this waiting area, basically. It's like limbo before you can move on, wherever it is beyond this. And they have like a judge, they have a panel of judges that determines whether you have to go back to Earth and, figure it out as I'm assuming another person, right? You're going to come because you're dead. So you're going to come back and have to work out whatever you didn't work out in that life, or they move you forward.
Hmm.
So I believe in it. I believe in that
Well,
concept. What about you?
I don't kn oh, I do. I believe that's where deja vu comes from. I think I've talked about this before, that the reason we experience deja vu is because we've probably already been there and had that happen before. Maybe just not in this shape or in this life. Otherwise, how could we? And also, if you think about our universe, everything is cyclical or in a cycle. And we have a lunar cycle, we have a menstruation cycle, we have monthly cycles, we have, one planet rotates around the moon rotates around the earth, and the earth rotates around the sun. If you think about it, everything is, and our planets are circles, everything is a cycle. So I do believe that there has to be something to it, although I don't know exactly how, because I don't necessarily because I'm not, a genius of any sort, but I'm sure that there's something to it.
Mhm.
12 more years pass, and then Nora and Arthur, remember the guy she meets at the writer's workshop, are married. They live in New York. Hesong had a girlfriend that he's no longer married to, but he wants to go to New York to visit Nora, so he makes a trip to New York. And Arthur wonders if he is a roadblock in this past lives, current lives love story of Nora and Hesong. But Nora reassures him that she loves Arthur. So there is a night on this trip where the three of them go to a speakeasy. Now, just when Hesong gets there, there's like they go and do things together, just the two of them, which I think is very nice and appropriate, because obviously they have a friendship that that predates Arthur and Nora's relationship. And obviously Arthur trusts Nora, and he and Nora are married. So he doesn't feel like he has to follow Nora around as she's giving, the New York City tour to her old Korean friend, right? And also,
Now,
they weren't 18 dating or 21 dating, they were 12, and it was like a puppy love.
right. But did someone on in one of their camps, whether it was Arthur's or Nora's, didn't they say to her that it was inappropriate
Yeah,
that
I seem to
she
recall that, but I can't remember who said it.
so what I want to know, if anybody wants to write in, because you know how people love writing into us, uh,
Right.
what what you think about that? Like, you have a
Oh, for the love of God, will somebody fucking write in?
Ooh, I touched a nerve. Um,
Woo!
I don't know. I think people are going to have differing opinions
Gabe,
on that.
if you're listening to this, could you just write in for fun? Murder and everything else at gmail.com before they
Oh my
cancel
God.
our Gmail account for lack of activity.
Oh, good
Oh,
God.
we are
But it
simple
is,
creatures, Cheryl and I.
it's interesting because they're of the opposite sex. Yes, they were, old friends. And yeah, I'm not so sure everybody would think it's okay or appropriate. Because you used the word appropriate, that it was appropriate that they go by themselves. But one of them had a friend that said they thought it was inappropriate.
Mhm.
So I think there would be different views on that.
Yeah,
Um,
I think think if you're more traditional, I think that you would think maybe but the thing that I find so interesting is when they reconnected on Facebook when she was starting her career in New York and when he was going to China for this Mandarin language exchange, their interactions with each other seemed very like it I don't want to use the word wholesome. It didn't seem romantic. It seemed more like a catch up. If they were sexting with each other or having phone sex or whatever, that would have been a different story. If they were having like a romantic engagement on a long-term
Well,
basis. But it
can
wasn't
I
like that.
can I back up a little bit? Before she gets married, when they reconnect after she finds out that he, what's his name? Because you know how sorry,
Hesong.
no shade to Korean. You know I have a hard time with your
She
names.
does. She
Hesung.
does with your names, your people. Your people.
When Nora finds out, thank God Nora changed her name in the movie, or else I wouldn't know her name either.
Nora.
So when Nora finds out that Haesung has been looking for her and they reconnect, right, over what were they using? Skype?
They were, I thought, yeah, they
Anyway,
were using Skype.
AOL.
That's going away in a month, by the way.
Do you remember when they were communicating like every day, right? And there's this huge time difference, so they had to figure out a good time. But remember the point where she is getting too wrapped up in it and she has to break it off, their communication, because she needs to focus on her career, and her studies. But she does find herself thinking about him a lot and running home and turning on her computer and to check if he's online or if he's reached out or whatever. And then she feels like, okay, I gotta back off of this, so she breaks the communication off and she tells him she can't communicate with him for a while. So okay, so now we fast forward and now she's married and Haesung comes to visit and okay, so get back to that point. So now
they do this whole like New York tour, et cetera, et cetera. And I will tell you, the guy that played that role, his name is Teo Yu. I don't know what he's been in before. Full disclosure, I'm not a real K-drama girl, and I don't enjoy, I don't watch K-drama. And so, I mean,
but she
I've
knows
watched,
K-pop. She knows all the
yeah, I
K-pop.
do. I've watched the obligatory, what was that movie that we didn't like? Parasite. I've
Parasite.
watched, like the obligatory, like, those kind of like Oscar nominated, foreign language films or whatever. But to watch these, mini series K dramas, I've not gotten into that. But he was they picked a very attractive actor. And the other thing was they really worked hard to change his look from, when he was a young man to like a university student to an adult. And they picked somebody who was very, very good at, he did really well in his role. I felt like he hit in his silence a lot of times. So one of the things about when she would speak to him, it would always be in Korean. When she would speak to her husband, Arthur, she would always speak in English. So it was so nice to see a film that seamlessly went between, because, back in the day, and when I say back in the day, Cheryl, you know what I mean. Language films were either English films or foreign language films, or what we used to refer to as foreign films with subtitles. And the thing that was so cool was this movie seamlessly moved in between both Korean and English without it being a thing. So, but because I know a considerable amount of Korean and because I understand how different the language is from, say, English, one of the things that I really liked was he was just so expressive in the way he spoke and in his emotions in the film. So that
Yeah,
was one of
it
the
was
things
very
I
good.
really liked. But so while he's in New York, they go to this speakeasy to have some drinks and they're sitting at the bar. And initially, Nora is sitting between Haesung and Arthur, and she is translating. But eventually, she begins to speak exclusively in Korean with Haesung because obviously it's to, and Arthur kind of takes on this peripheral kind of his body language appears almost like he's kind of like slumped on the bar, almost maybe a little bit like forgotten.
Yeah, it
And
made me very uncomfortable
mhm,
because, like you said, she starts off translating everything Haesung is saying to her, to Arthur, to include him in the
mhm,
conversation. But as it goes on, because it was tedious, right, for her to try to have this conversation with Haesung
right.
and have to translate everything. So just kind of gradually they fell out of that. And then, yeah, Arthur takes a position. I mean, his
Mhm.
body position and his body language, like, I'm just going to let them talk. But I felt really bad for him because he
But
was
you
excluded.
But because of his body language, even he looks further away from her than she looks from Haesung because they're speaking to each other in Korean, because they're interacting. All of a sudden, it looks like he's a mile away. And you realize that he's not moved at all. It's just his body language and the fact that he's not included in the
Mm-hmm.
conversation. It's very, very subtle, but it's also impacting. And
Mm-hmm.
then Nora gets up and goes to the bathroom and Haesung apologizes to Arthur for speaking alone with Nora, and Arthur says he is glad to have met him. And I felt like Arthur was such a solid character. He obviously doesn't begrudge his wife any time or energy that she's put into this relationship. And he recognizes that Haesung was such an important part of Nora's childhood that why would he begrudge him this time? It's a small blip of time in their lives that Haesung's going to be in New York and better to make the most of all of the time they get to spend together. And you
Mm-hmm.
almost get the feeling like Arthur wouldn't have minded if they spent every moment of the time together and not have included him at all because he really, really is on the periphery of this relationship. It's not his relationship with Haesung. It's Haesung's relationship with Nora and Nora's relationship with Haesung.
Yeah, and it's almost you feel through the whole thing that there's this unfinished business between them. You don't know where it's going to go, but there's an unfinished story between Haesung and Nora because they had this history when they were little kids. And I
Mhm.
feel like Arthur, uh, he understood it, he acknowledged it, he respected it. It was like he knew. I felt like he was nervous at times. Like, I don't know if my wife's gonna reconnect romantically with this guy or what, but I need it to run its course. I need to let her do this. Like, it wasn't his character to like stop her from doing it. It's almost like even for himself, he needed them to figure that out wherever it was going to go.
Right. One of the things I didn't mention was when Haesung is going to Nora and Arthur's apartment to meet Arthur before they go to the speakeasy. He's going up the stairs carrying his suitcase and he says to Nora, he knows I'm coming, right? And I found it to be such a very Korean thing. He wants to be respectful. He knows he's going into their home. He's going to be leaving his suitcase there and they're going to be going out together. But he wants to make sure that he's okay with him coming because it is indeed Nora's husband and
Right.
Nora and her husband's home that he's going to be stepping into. It was a very like Korean thing to me that he was so conscious that he was going to be doing that. He wanted to be respectful. And, you know, Korean culture is a very hierarchical culture that has a lot of like checks and balances on respect for elders, respect for people of importance, respect for certain professions, respect, there's different levels of speech that you use. And so I just found it to be just so quintessentially Korean that he asked that.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if my husband and I invited someone into our home, they would know like you've been invited, so of course you're welcome. They wouldn't have to stop and be like, is it going to be okay with your husband? You know what I mean? It just, I
Right.
feel like in American society, we don't have a lot of, different levels to our, relate our respect levels and things like that. So, so you invite someone into your space as a couple, that's an open invite from everybody. If my husband
Mm.
doesn't want someone to come over, I'm not going to go, we'd like to invite you over to our house.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, they return to Arthur and Nora's apartment after the speakeasy. Haesung invites them to visit him in South Korea and calls for a taxi, and Nora waits with him on the curb, and they exchange a very long, meaningful look, and they just stand there and stare at each other until the taxi arrives. Um, and Haesung wonders if they were at that moment experiencing a past life, and asks Nora what their relationship will be in their next life. And I just thought that was so it was so simple, but it was so beautiful because they're not focusing on a life of regret. And I feel like too many times in romantic movies or dramas, there's all these regrets. I wish I'd done this differently. I wish I'd done that. Instead, they just keep going back to this idea of past lives.
Hmm. I Yeah. Go ahead.
Anyway, Nora says she doesn't know, and then Haesung says, I'll see you then, meaning in the past life. And then he leaves in the taxi. She walks back to her apartment where Arthur is standing at the bottom of the stoop. And she kind of falls into his arms and she starts to weep. And
Hmm.
you realize that, I mean, she obviously very much cares for him. She very much loves her husband. She very much cares for Haesung. And he played an important part in her life, and this visit obviously was very emotionally charged. But you also realize that with this idea of past lives, yeah, we can love people at different stages of our life and still have love for them, even though it's not the kind of love that we have right now with what we're doing in our present life.
Hmm.
Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
So how did you think of the movie as a whole? I felt like it was
Very
um,
slow.
very slow, and it, it kept my interest because I wanted to see where it went. And I'm glad that when they are sitting at the bar and Haesung and Nora are then just speaking with Arthur just kind of off to the side. To
Mhm.
me, yeah, of course that final scene was powerful, but their conversation, their dialogue was to me the pivotal point of the movie, and it's that 10 to 15 minutes of dialogue that was the best part of the movie for me. The rest of it was a little bit tenuous. It was like tedious, I should say, tedious,
Mhm.
because it was so slow. But of course, we already said these are spoilers, but so it was very slow. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to finish this because Joy and I are going to talk about it. And I don't want to say I quit halfway through, and I want to see how it ends. But I ended up crying in that last 20 minutes of
Wow.
the film because when they're at the bar, um, Haesung says, I didn't think liking your husband would hurt so much.
Oh,
That
yeah.
just got me. And then she tells him that little girl, because it's like it's like Haesung is trying to recapture their
Mhm.
11, 12-year-old selves. And I think my opinion is that Nora, it was kind of one-sided. I think she enjoyed how much he adored her, how much Haesung adored her, and how he was trying to capture that. And I feel like she was feeling like, oh, maybe, maybe there is something to this, but then in the end she knows that it's just something that they went through when they were little kids. But she says to him, I'm no longer that little girl, but, and she grabs his hand, but that little girl did exist.
Yeah.
And that really got to me.
That was
It
really
really,
cool.
really got to me, because who among us doesn't look back fondly and think, oh, I've just learned things in the past should stay in the past. Can I get an amen on that?
Amen.
Yeah, but you fantasize, right? And you romanticize. And
Yeah.
then reality is, I'm not that person anymore. But that person did exist. You're not foolish for trying to find me after 12 years, and you're not foolish for coming out to visit me. But that I'm no longer that little girl. I was crying at the end. But I will say it took a long time to get there, you guys. So it's up to you whether you want to watch this movie, because it's slow, but the end is powerful.
Yeah.
That's my review of it.
Yeah. And remember, again, there are subtitles. So if you don't enjoy reading subtitles, this is not the film for you. If you don't enjoy slow films, but I have to tell you that I waited until I had a weekend where no one was home. I was here by myself. I had my favorite snacks, and I had like 3 nights of nothing like planned. So it was actually a really nice movie to watch, that was gonna, I could take my time. I could stop it and pause it whenever I needed to go to the bathroom, whatever. It was just, I was just in the mood for a slow film. So anyway,
Mm.
so
So
anywho,
would you recommend it? So do you give it a thumbs up or thumbs down?
absolutely. I would recommend it to people of a certain age who enjoy reading subtitles. I don't think that this movie would be interesting to the under 40 crowd. That's
Yeah,
just me.
I agree. I
Very
don't know if I would recommend it. I don't know if I give it a thumbs up, thumbs down, or thumb sideways. Um,
well. I special thanks to Sherry who recommended this film to me. I haven't heard from her yet if she really liked it or not, but she did definitely say it was interesting.
yeah, interesting is the word.
Yeah. Well, roaring on, we got to get the ball rolling because you know what? This is the romp to end all romps. And that is, we are going to roll right into Anora 2024 American romantic comedy drama. I have to say, when I read that comedy part, I was like, I mean, I belly laughed so many times. And I got to tell you guys, this movie, we're going to head off in separate directions. It stars Mikey Madison. It was written, directed, produced, and edited by Sean Baker. It stars Mikey Madison as Anora, or Annie Makiva, a stripper from New York who marries the wealthy son of a Russian oligarch. And yeah, I'm not even going to try to name the name of the kid who plays the Russian son or the supporting cast. But I said earlier, it received numerous accolades. It won a bunch of awards. And so let's just jump right into the plot. Anyway, this girl lives in a Russian American neighborhood in Brooklyn, New York, and she works at a strip club. And her boss introduces her to Vanya, the 21-year-old son of a Russian oligarch who has requested someone who is fluent in Russian. And so, even though he's in the US, I guess he's supposed to be going to school, he spends most of his time partying, clubbing, playing video games, getting lap dances, and living in his father's lavish Brooklyn mansion. So, I will say, Cheryl, at the beginning of the film, when you see her cozying up to guys at the strip club and then taking them into private rooms or whatever, VIP rooms, whatever you want to call it. Not that I know a lot about strip clubs, and giving them lap dances and pole dancing and taking her clothes off And then like there's a scene where she says, we're not supposed to do this, but she like takes off her bottoms. I have to say that I I am super sex positive in that sex work is work. We should, women should and men who do sex work should be recognized and they should get paid accordingly, and there should be protections in place, not just in places like Louisiana and Vegas, but maybe everywhere, like the Scandinavian model where they get, government funded HIV tests and STI tests so that they can get treatment that's subsidized so that they don't get and pass on, STIs and things like that, so that they are protected, so they aren't preyed upon. There's a lot of strippers that end up being stalked and get beaten up, and they end up, there's always a lot of like drug and alcohol abuse in strip clubs. But I will say, because of her age, I mean, she was very, very good. I don't know how many. If I were playing a role like that, I'd need like 60 years to learn how to be a pole dancer. I don't know how long she took to learn how to do some of that shit, but like, whoa, like hats off to her.
Yeah. Well,
that's all you're going to say about that.
Yeah. Joy and I have very different opinions about this movie. I think past lives we were sort of on the same wavelength, but we definitely have very different opinions about this movie. I'm just going to put right out there that Joy loved it and I did not. I do know Mikey Madison, the lead actress who played Anora, who won the Oscar for Best Actress. I know her from a TV series called Better Things. And if you haven't seen it, it's great. It stars Pamela
I'm actually going to
Adlon.
go watch it because of this.
Yeah, Pamela Adlon and Mikey Madison played one of her daughters, and it's very I think it kind of parallels her life, Pamela Adlon, in real life. But anyway, Mikey Madison played one of her daughters. I did think she did a good job. I'm just going to say that I didn't like it as much as Joy, just as the construct of the movie. I think the first part of it went on too long. It was like, okay, I get it. Let's move on with the plot. And then I've told Joy that I wanted more backstory on Anora so I could really care about her. And yeah, it was too long. Too long for the setup. Too many sex scenes. I have no problem with sex scenes, but like you get it after a while. It's like, okay, this is a spoiled rich kid. I don't need to see him in all his different elements of being a spoiled rich kid. You know what I mean? Like for me, it was just like, okay, let's go, let's keep the ball rolling. And I thought it was too long, thought it was too many sex scenes, and I needed a backstory on her. That's my review of it. I will let Joy go ahead and gush about the movie while I sit here and grit my teeth because I can't stand hearing about how good it was, because I do not agree.
Well, I will start by saying that I felt like Anora was very similar, like especially the beginning, to Pretty Women. It shared the core premise of a working class woman involved in sex work, finds love, and a fairy tale like transformation with a wealthy man. However, that's where the similarities end. So let me just start with Vanya hires Anora for several sexual encounters after the night at the strip club. He invites her to a party, and then the following morning offers her $15,000 to be his girlfriend for the week. And during the week, Anora parties with Vanya and his friends. They go on an extravagant trip to Vegas. And then at the end of the week, he reveals that he has to return to Russia permanently to start working at his father's company, and expresses disdain and hatred, or like distaste, for his parents. He suggests that he won't have to leave if he can marry an American, and impulsively proposes marriage. She's reluctant at first, but remember, she's a working class girl who is grinding it out in a strip club every night and living with her sister and her sister's boyfriend, her husband, and, commuting. And, she's now been on a private plane to Vegas. She's been partying. There's, they've been in and out of VIP rooms. And so she agrees. So they have a quick Vegas chapel wedding. He buys her a huge wedding ring, an expensive fur coat. She resigns from her job, moves into his mansion, or rather his father's mansion. And when the news of their marriage reaches Russia, Vanya's mother, Galina, orders his Armenian godfather, Toros, to find them and arrange an annulment while she and her husband are on their private plane flying to the US. So this is the part of the movie that I mean, okay, first of all, full disclosure, I watched this film with my husband. My daughter came home 30 minutes into the film, thank God, when all of the gratuitous sex was over at the beginning. And when I say gratuitous sex, I'm just saying, remember, she's a stripper and she's working at a strip club, and this kid has hired her to basically have a bunch of sexual encounters with her. So they're having sex all the first 30 minutes of this movie. There's a lot of sex, a lot of lap dances, and
the 2, the 3, the 4, 5. But we don't need to see 20 million sex
well,
scenes.
I didn't mind
They're
it
having
so much, and I didn't see my husband complaining either. But I will tell you that I am so glad that we paused it when my daughter walked in, because then she said, "What are you watching?" And we told her, and she goes, "Oh my God, I started watching that." And she goes, it's pretty it's pretty like a lot of sex in the first part." And I go, "Okay, but that half hour is over." So she sat down and watched the rest of the film with us. And there were some periods during this movie where we were laughing like crazy because it would get so comical and funny. So Toro sends his henchmen, Garnik and Igor, to the mansion. They inform Vanya that his parents are taking him back to Russia. They make Anora mad by calling her, or Aunt Annie mad by calling her a prostitute, and suggesting Vanya only married her for green card. And Vanya runs away. He literally runs out the door. One of the guys tries to chase him, but he doesn't catch him. And then Anora
falls.
he falls, and then Annie proceeds to get into a violent struggle with Garnik and Igor before they're able to restrain her. Then Toros comes back, and she breaks his nose and gives him a concussion. He confiscates her wedding ring, gags her, and offers her $10,000 for the annulment. And Anora insists that she and Vanya are in love. Now, I will say that obviously, if you're listening to the story, it just sounds too made up that this girl who is a sex worker, a stripper, after a week has fallen in love. But you know what? Julia Roberts fell in love with Richard Gere after 6 days. So you do the math. But anyway, Anora, or Annie, Toros, Garnik, and Igor start to search Brooklyn for Vanya. And I have to tell you that this part of the movie was like searching for a needle in a haystack. And of course, I'm like, what are the chances that they're going to find this kid? But of course, they go to all the places where he knows he would be welcome, or where they speak Russian. And they find him in the strip club where he and her met, but he's too drunk to focus. So they drag him outside, and then they go to wait outside the courthouse, and then they annul the marriage. And during this time, she gets a chance to meet after she gets a chance to meet Vanya's parents. Whoo, boy, let me tell you. The mother is like, tough as balls. The dad thinks that Annie is hilarious and spends most of the time just laughing at his wife. And they all get on a plane to go to Vegas to get this marriage annulled, because they find out that since they don't have a prenup, they have to go back to Vegas. And they go back. Annie signs the annulment papers. Igor suggests that Vanya apologize, but Galina objects to it, and Annie insults both Vanya and Galina before leaving, telling Galina that Vanya got married with the intention of basically spiting his mother. So then the end of the movie is heartbreaking. Igor takes Annie back to New York to get her belongings at the mansion. she confronts Igor about their encounter. She's very angry. She plays angry so well in this movie. She calls him a
Mhm.
rapist and he denies that he's a rapist. The next morning, Igor gives Annie the money he's supposed to and drives her home. And in the car, he returns to her the wedding ring as a gesture of goodwill. He has somehow taken it off of Toros. And Annie gets on his lap in the car and initiates sex with him. But when he tries to kiss her, she breaks down sobbing. And the movie ends with her sobbing basically in his arms.
Yeah.
And it's so heartbreaking because obviously this whole pretty woman dream that she had where she thought Vanya loved her, obviously he doesn't, and he's done this before and he's just used her, but also she's used him. And but you realize that she had more to lose by this relationship not working out, and she realizes she's back at her sister's place in Brooklyn, and she's probably going to have to go back and work at the strip club. And everything in this movie has been transactional. And Igor has given her this ring that she thought was hers, but that was taken away from her. And the only thing she knows how to do is her transaction is to initiate sex with him and to have sex with him. So that's her form of currency. The ending to me was just so heartbreaking and sad for her. But it was very, very funny the whole movie up until I felt like the end. And it was just unbelievable. And the hijinks I felt like were so comical, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. My husband thoroughly enjoyed it, and our kid thoroughly enjoyed the movie. And when we were done, and right before I watched the movie, Cheryl and I were talking, and she goes, "If you like this movie, I am seriously going to question our friendship." And I told my husband, a half hour into the film, I go, "I am loving this film, and I think I'm going to love this film, and I think Cheryl's going to think there's something wrong with me." But I really enjoyed it. And if anyone out there is listening to this and who enjoyed this film as well, you need to email me and tell me that, or text me or message me on one of our socials, and I want to hear why you loved it.
And
I
if you
loved it.
didn't like it, I'd
Yeah.
like you to write in too. Can I just make a comment? I will say the
Yeah.
last scene was powerful. It was at first it was like, whoa, what is she doing? And then the way it ends, it's exactly that. That is her only way that she knows how to communicate with people, is to have sex with, with guys, especially obviously with guys. And then she breaks down because that last scene, Joy, I was like, this is the content that I wanted more of throughout the whole movie. To me, that last scene was very powerful. And I'm like, where was this through the whole movie? They went from being, and hijinks is a perfect word. And for me, hijinks has to be done a certain way for me to laugh. I chuckled once in the movie.
Really? When did you chuckle?
Yeah. When she was tied up because she kept beating them up, and that one guy that she broke his nose, he's like, don't go near her, don't untie her, because she was like a wild stallion. But it was very disjointed. The feeling of the movie was very disjointed. I didn't know whether you wanted it to be a movie about the grittiness about sex workers. I didn't know if you wanted it to be a slapstick comedy. And then you throw in this very dramatic scene at the end. That was nothing comical about that. That last scene belonged in a drama. It belonged in a dramatic movie. And I think that made me even angrier, that last scene. I was like, this is what I was looking for. This is what I thought the whole movie was going to be about. To have that feeling, to have more depth to it. And I guess I shouldn't have thought that, because it was a comedy, although I have seen some real dramas that had levity in it and had, some comedic moments. But I just have to say, I thought this was not Oscar worthy. I thought Mikey
You're
Madison,
kidding
while
me.
she did a good job, I don't think it's best actress material. But you guys, let
Oh.
me just say, La La Land was that best picture. I think it was best picture. Had a lot of best. Even if it didn't win, it was nominated. I think it won. You guys, I couldn't get through the first 10 minutes of that movie. Parasite, I could not jump on board with the whole, I don't know what the big deal was about that movie. And
Yeah.
then this one, I'm just like, I have sworn off award shows. I'm like, I have a friend. I have a friend that said, "Are you going to watch the Oscars tonight?" And I was like, "No, I haven't really followed the movies. I used to love watching award shows when I saw a lot of the movies and I could root for one of them, you know?"
Yeah.
She said, she and her husband watched it so they knew what movies to look for. And all I have to say about that theory or that process is I would never look to an award show to get my library of films I need to watch, especially after this one. I'm like, I've sworn off all the hoopla about award winning
I
shows.
disagree completely.
I know you do.
Next
Go ahead.
up-
You can wrap this up. Go ahead with all your praise over this movie.
Next up is going to be The Brutalist. Next up is going to be Conclave. I'm
and let
not
me tell
saying
you-
that those are the best movies, but the only good movies. But I will say that I felt like that award was was well earned. I felt like she did an amazing job. I felt like it was a 2025 true romance. I really did. I loved,
and that makes me so mad because
loved this film, and we were belly laughing at different points. The fight scene was so great. We were belly laughing. The parents on the plane ride to Vegas. I mean, there were parts of this film that were just so good.
I know I said I was going to let you close it up, but I just have to say, when we did our favorite movies, I forgot about True Romance. And let me say that is one of my favorite movies. But the fight scene, and that fight scene is one of the most iconic fight scenes between Patricia Arquette and James Gandolfini. That was not a comedic fight scene.
No,
so it was very dramatic. And don't compare this movie. If you do anything for me, Joy, do not compare Anora to True Romance. Do not.
Guys,
if you value friendship,
listen to me. If you are not watching Anora right now, it is a real crime. But you know what else is a crime?
Watching Anora.
No.
What's that, Joy?
That we are out of time.
We are way out of time. Well, thank you for listening, everyone. And don't complicate your day by watching Anora. All creativity, commentary, and opinions in this podcast belong to Cheryl and Joy. Music composed and mixed by Gabe McKeon. Logo and merch managed by Cheryl Yamaguchi. Podcast editing, advertising, and social media managed by Joy McKeon. Legal representation provided by John Vojezic. Please like, subscribe, follow, and listen. You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Audible.com, Amazon Music, YouTube, and iHeartRadio. And remember, you can find us on Instagram and TikTok, or you can email us at murderandeverythingelse@gmail.com.
Bye, fishes.